Hello, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Sonoma County District Attorney, which is a 4-year term. My name is Alice Richardson, a proud member of the League of Women Voters, and I'll be the moderator for today's forum. If there is anyone in the audience who needs a translation of what is being said here, please see Linda Garcia, and Linda will raise her hand somewhere, or Francisco Vesquez, both League members, there you go, thank you, who will translate into Spanish for you. This event is being shown live by way of C Media and will be rebroadcast throughout the month of May. At the end of our forum, I'll tell you how to access this forum as well as all the other forums the League is conducting throughout the county. Before we get started, a word from our sponsor, the League of Women Voters. Here is our mission statement. The League is a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. We do, however, take action on selected government issues in the public interest. Cell phones. Anybody that has a cell phone or any kind of device that has an on and off switch, please turn it to the off or vibrate position. We would like to be able to have this event without any interruption, and we appreciate your cooperation. We welcome our candidates to this event. The current District Attorney, Jill Ravitch, is on the left, and the challenger is Victoria Shanahan. We met earlier to decide who would go first with her opening statement, and we will stagger the questions so that the same person isn't always answering first. And here's how the evening will be conducted. First, we'll have the opening statements by the candidates, and then there will be three question and answer periods. One by the League. The second, the candidates will ask each other questions, and then it's up to you, the audience, to ask questions. In the questions for you folks in the audience, when you entered, you were given the opportunity to take a 3x5 card and write a question. Please keep them as brief and to the point as possible, and we have card runners who will be going up and down the aisles, giving you more cards or pencils as you need them. The question should not be directed to just one candidate because we want both of them to answer. And it goes without saying that any inflammatory or any question attacking a candidate won't even get to me. Since this forum is live and being taped for broadcast on television later, we need to keep within the time limit. So we have two timekeepers extraordinaire. We have Anita Lytle and Linda Hungerford, who will help us do that. It's pretty self-explanatory, candidates. The yellow card, if we raise the yellow card, please. The yellow card, 30 seconds to sum up, and then the red card tells you to finish your thoughts and the sentence. As in all League candidate forums, we endeavor to conduct a civil, respectful discussion with our candidates and from you in the audience as well. The more we know about the candidates and their positions, then the better it is to cast an intelligent vote. So we will begin now. We flipped a coin, and Ms. Ravitch will give her opening statement first, and it will be 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Richardson, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this forum together, and I want to thank all of you who are here with us this evening and those who will be viewing this discussion in days to come for paying attention. Many people in Sonoma County don't even know what the district attorney does, and I have made it a point to try and educate our community a little bit about what we do as prosecutors, and I hope that I can continue to provide that information in this forum tonight. It's really great to be here, and it's really great to tell you how honored I am to have served as district attorney over the course of the last 3.5 years. I am excited about the work that we've done in the district attorney's office due to the talented members of the office, some of whom are here tonight, including my opponent. I'm excited about the success that we have enjoyed in Sonoma County since I took office, and I believe that the leadership that I brought to this office is in part, not entirely, responsible for the success that we've enjoyed. Because you have to put together a good team in order to put together a winning team. And I think that's where we are now, and I think that's where we're headed. Now, I'm putting Sonoma County safety first, and that's what I've asked my members of my office to do with me. We are relentlessly focusing on violent crime, as well as the types of crimes that are having the greatest impact on our community. I've ensured that experienced prosecutors are handling the most serious cases, and that we are doing what we can to deal with the fallout from the recession in 2008 to address it, and I look forward to talking about it. My 27 years of experience, I believe, has enabled me to take this office where it needs to be and will continue to take this office where it should be in years to come. And I'm looking forward to talking about that with you tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for extending this opportunity for me. I'm Victoria Shanahan, and I'm running for district attorney. I'm a current deputy district attorney in the office, and for the past 3.5 years, I've watched as leadership has failed within our office. I feel I can do a better job at leading our office and providing community safety. The DA should not be beholden to the law enforcement officers. We should not be beholden to victims. We are beholden to the taxpayers of Sonoma County and upholding the law and seeking justice at all cost. We need to put the right people in the right positions. We need to be smart on crime and focus our resources in areas where we need to focus, such as serious and violent felonies. We need to do justice and serve the community. I hope, if elected, to take politics out of the office, to not be beholden to any one group, and serve Sonoma County. I feel my years of working as a deputy district attorney have served me well. I feel that I can inspire the office to do well and motivate and continue to promote community safety by putting the right people in the right positions and focusing our resources. I'm the right person for the job. We need a leader that inspires, and I'm that leader. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to have questions from the League of Women Voters that were developed by the Voter Service Committee. And since Ms. Ravitch went first with her opening statement, we'll start with you, Ms. Shanahan, on the questions. How would you describe the role of the district attorney locally, and what attributes or strengths do you possess personally that you feel are necessary to be successful in the position of district attorney?
The attributes to be a district attorney, and it's important that we do this again, and I mentioned it in my opening, is that we should not be beholden to any one group. We should not be beholden to law enforcement, and we should not be beholden to victims. We serve the community and we seek justice. Sometimes justice means filing a case. Sometimes justice means not filing a case. I think that I possess the requisite skills to be the district attorney. I'm decisive, I'm approachable, and I'm transparent. I will always speak the truth and provide the truth to the community. And that's what we need in the district attorney.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch?
Well, you know, I know a little bit about the role of DA because I've had the honor to have that position for the last 3.5 years, and it has been a learning experience, and it has been an opportunity to really grow in the role. The role of the district attorney is to lead the law enforcement community. I am the chief law enforcement officer in Sonoma County. It's essential that I lead by example, which is why I took a first-degree murder case to jury conviction my first year in office, to show my office what it takes to go into court, put on a case, and get a just outcome. Another place where the district attorney can lead is in policies that are put into place in the office. First policy I put into place in my office was a Marcy's Law policy to deal with victims' rights. And the other place that a district attorney leads in Sonoma County is with our community partners, both law enforcement partners, community-based organizations, as well as members of the citizenry, so that we can all work together to make this the safest county possible. With regard to strengths, I think I have strong leadership skills. I think that I have been very effective in taking our office where it needs to go, which is why we have the highest felony conviction rate in 10 years, according to an independent source. and which is why we're seeing incredible success in a variety of areas where we didn't focus before that are impacting our community the most, such as elder protection. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Ravitch, then this is you're the first questioner on this. Name what you consider to be the successes of the DA's office over the last 4 years, and conversely, what do you think could have been handled differently or better?
We can always do better. And anytime I speak to a group, that's one of the statements that I always make. We can always do better. And I challenge not only the members of my office, but the members of the community to give me ideas for how we can improve the services that we provide in order to keep our community safe as possible. With regard to successes that we've enjoyed since I've taken office, as I said earlier, I put together a dedicated elder protection unit. Our senior population is growing much faster than anybody could imagine. And it's important that we deal with this vulnerable population. So I put together a task force of prosecutors, advocates, and investigators so that we can address that type of crime, both neglect, abuse, and financial abuse effectively. Additionally, I went out and got a grant. So now we've got 2 prosecutors focused solely on prosecuting DUI offenses, essential in a community where we have too many DUIs occurring, and we're getting great results there as well. The other place we've had a lot of success is in the area of the Family Justice Center. These are really short opportunities to respond. But the Family Justice Center opened under my watch, and we have served, I believe, in excess of 2,000 clients since 2011. Wraparound services for victims of family violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and elder abuse, all available under one roof to serve any resident of Sonoma County at no cost. Thank you.
And anytime anybody wants to have the question repeated, please tell me.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. The Elder Protection Unit actually existed before Ms. Ravitch took office, and that particular unit has thrived despite Ms. Ravitch. So as far as successes, I would say that the Elder Protection Unit is thriving. What could we do better? Well, we could focus our resources. We could focus our resources on serious and violent crime. Instead, we're focusing our resources on low-level marijuana cases that cause backlog in the court system, that create tons of money and time and effort of prosecutors spent on those cases, taken away from important cases that are serious and violent where we have victims. We should also reinstitute the homicide unit. That was something Ms. Ravitch disbanded when she took office. I'm not sure why, other than to spread homicides throughout the office. The homicide unit was a high-functioning unit prior to Ms. Ravitch taking office. It handled the most serious cases. It had the most serious and experienced prosecutors in that unit, and we had good results. As a result of disbanding that homicide unit, homicides are now an afterthought. They're given to people who have other caseloads that they have to deal with and not given time to focus on these most important cases, and I think we could do better in that area.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Shanahan, what would your policies be as district attorney regarding when to seek the death penalty, considering how costly they are to pursue?
Well, obviously, the most serious and egregious of cases, we would seek the death penalty. The death penalty is a tool that is in the prosecutor's belt. It's something that we can charge, and obviously the decision is ultimately up to the community of jurors that decide whether or not death will occur in a particular case. We would definitely have to take a look at each and every homicide that comes in that qualifies to be charged as a death penalty case and look at it. Our decision would be made within the first 120 days to decide we're going to seek the death penalty or not. Hopefully, we don't have any cases like that that come during my watch, but if we do, we will look at it very carefully, considering the costs and time and consideration of the victims involved in the case on what we should seek in the matter.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch?
Yeah, we have a case in our office right now where we're looking at death as a sentence, and I will tell you that we did put a policy into effect, and we're following the policy right now. It has been a policy that has been multi-layered. It has been exacerbated by the number of individuals who are involved in the geographic distance that many of them have traveled to the point where the homicide occurred. I really disagree with putting a timeline of 120 days on a decision as serious as that. And I do that having gone through the machinations right now on making, I think, one of the most serious decisions I will make as district attorney. I think that you make the decision when all the information is available to you and not when the clock strikes 120 days. To consider asking a jury to take somebody's life is a very, very, very solemn task. And to suddenly decide that it's going to happen after 120 days of consideration without even taking into consideration the complexity of the case, the enormity of the task, is to not understand the question that's being posed. So the last death penalty case we had in Sonoma County was Robert Scully, who murdered a deputy sheriff. I was called out that night. I was there at the scene, and I watched as the trial unfolded, and it was years in the making. Prior to that, it was Richard Allen Davis. We've been fortunate in Sonoma County not to have too many cases where the death penalty was indeed sought. We have one now, and it's something that we're looking at very carefully and deliberately, and ultimately, the decision can't only be made on the basis of cost. It has to be made on the basis of what is appropriate, what is the appropriate sanction for somebody who has committed the most heinous of offenses and is deserving of that sanction. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Ravitch, do you support a criminal grand jury in Sonoma County? Why or why not?
Well, I mean, if you're asking if I support a sitting criminal grand jury, then I don't know that I do. I know that they have a sitting criminal grand jury in other jurisdictions, such as San Francisco. I have convened criminal grand juries. Oh, actually, I only convened one, but it was some time back, and it was in response to an increasing number of gang offenses that were occurring that needed to be handled in a way where the public wasn't necessarily going to be privy to the evidence that was going to be presented. They can be effective in a case where the district attorney believes there might be enough evidence but isn't sure and wants to use the criminal grand jury as a fact-finding body to assist in that investigative effort. But in general, I think that it's incumbent that the district attorney make a decision whether or not the charges should be filed and then present the evidence in a public forum known as a preliminary hearing. So in sum, I do think that there might be an occasion where a criminal grand jury is appropriate. I do not support a sitting criminal grand jury because I don't think we have a caseload that supports it. And in conclusion, I think it's better to present our case in the open unless it's going to somehow compromise the evidence or the safety of individuals involved. The case that I handled involved an informant, and it was essential that that information be presented in confidence. Thank you.
Ms. Shanahan.
I agree that convening a criminal grand jury is important in some instances. In Mendocino County, we convened them fairly regularly on cases that involved marijuana because that community had some issues with marijuana, and that was the best way to address them was through the criminal grand jury. I don't think it should be a permanent thing. I think it should be used sparingly. In some instances in Sonoma County, we've used it in cases where an individual suffers from mental health issues and the crime is serious enough where if we convene the criminal grand jury, once they indict, then it triggers a mental health component to how that case is handled, and I think that's important. We do get a lot of mental health cases. As far as officer-involved shootings, I have been a big proponent in doing criminal grand juries in close call cases and opening up those criminal grand juries with the permission of the court to have the public hear the evidence and present that evidence so that the criminal grand jury can make the ultimate decision on those officer-involved shootings that are close calls.
Thank you. And Ms. Shanahan, the state is sending prisoners back to county jails. What is your policy in regards to encouraging plea bargains that include drug treatment and rehabilitation instead of incarceration?
Well, obviously, the new changes in the law really changed our role as a prosecutor. No longer are we seeking prison in many cases. We are now working as social workers in determining what's the best outcome for a particular defendant and whether or not drug treatment is a part of that rehabilitation, since prison now is no longer an option. Parole is allowing, or we take over most of the we are taking over the parole hearings, and so we are involved in the process where individuals are released from prison and dealing with those issues. So I think our role as a prosecutor has changed as with the law has changed, and that we now need to consider other options in dealing with criminals and the cause of their criminality, and whether or not drug treatment is an option and the best way to deal with the issue. And we're doing that every day in the courtroom.
Ms. Ravitch.
Well, yeah, realignment was really quite a change to the criminal justice system, one of the biggest changes probably since the 70s when we went to determinate sentencing. And every district attorney has had to face what to do with this new population that is coming back to our community, whether released from prison to local supervision or incurring new criminal convictions that do not take the individuals to state prison, so we have to handle them locally. I am a member of our Community Corrections Partnership, which involves all of the justice partners working together to find smart solutions to how to deal with this new population. The state basically said, we're not getting it right, so counties, you figure it out, and here's a bunch of money to help you do it. And so what we're doing is we're working together in a collaborative fashion to find outcomes that will be appropriate for these offenders so that we can do better than the state recidivism rate for CDC or the Department of Corrections, which is around 60–65%. And what we've done is we've put together a variety of different programs, a variety of different options for offenders so that they can find a way to keep from reoffending. It's too soon to tell whether or not we're having marked success. We're tracking it as best as we can. And honestly, right now, there's a lot of disagreement with regard to how you define recidivism for purposes of tracking this statistical information. But realignment didn't change the way I was thinking about how to deal with offenders. I have always believed in my 27 years as a criminal trial lawyer that when you look at a criminal case and you look at the offender, you have to take into consideration who the individual is, why it was that they committed the offense, and what it's going to take to keep them from committing that offense again. Whether it's rehabilitation, whether or not it's incarceration, there are a variety of different options. And realignment has just introduced a different population, but the fact-finding and the problem-solving really hasn't changed that much in all of these years. Thank you.
All right. Now we go to the portion of the evening where the candidates will ask each other questions, 2 questions each. And they will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal if they feel that it is necessary. So, Ms. Ravitch, if you want to ask your first question, please.
Sure. So, Victoria, you've talked a little bit about plea bargaining just now in the context of realignment, and you've been critical of these Department of Justice statistics that show that we have the highest felony conviction rate in 10 years, statistics that were compiled not inside of the office. Now, your assignment for the last 2.5 years has been charging and plea bargaining. And so presumably you've been engaged in that pretty extensively. And yet when reassigned to the domestic violence unit, you've also continued to plea bargain, having picked a jury on a Friday and then on Monday, reduced a sexual predator's case to a misdemeanor. In another case involving a domestic violence victim where you added a strike prior conviction, you then came in at a later court appearance and reduced it to a misdemeanor. I think these are examples of plea bargaining, and you're not suggesting that we don't plea bargain these cases, are you? I mean, isn't it sometimes necessary to get justice for victims and ensure public safety?
Plea bargaining is a large part of what we do as district attorneys. Obviously, when we file cases, we're assessing cases, and cases change and evolve as time goes on. It's funny that I'm being talked about cases that I've handled, yet never have been asked about my handling of those particular cases. In the instances in plea bargaining, you have experienced prosecutors who make a judgment call on a case. You're assessing the case on a daily basis, weekly basis, even in the middle of trial, and you're making adjustments. Our early resolution court, where I was assigned for 2.5 years, that was the whole goal. The county spent millions of dollars in assessing how to best save resources and get the same justice sooner. This was something the county wanted, and the DA's office had to be a part of. During that assignment, part of the process is giving the best deal up front after assessing everything. Every DA that's assigned to ECR has to do that. It's part of our job. I've never disparaged the discussion of plea bargaining. It's one of the things we do in our office. However, my issues have been plea bargaining of cases that shouldn't have been plea bargained, that are given child molesters who are given probation, or instances where 28 counts of environmental crimes are charged and then it's dismissed in the middle of trial, all counts but 2. So it's instances like that that I think it's important to know your case, have the right person assigned to the case. I'm not disparaging plea bargaining. It's what we have to do, and it's something victims are aware of when we discuss the case with them, that there is a way to resolve the case. So that's where I stand on that issue.
Did you want to have a 30-second rebuttal?
Well, only that it's easy to throw a couple of cases out and say, gee, there are examples of poor plea bargaining, and yet at the same time, when confronted with cases that you've plea bargained, you say, well, nobody even bothered talking to me about them. I wonder if you've talked to the individuals who you're accusing of inappropriate plea bargaining to find out why they resolved the cases the way they did, whether there was a good reason for it. I mean, shouldn't we really be sure that we're getting justice at the end of the day instead of just bandying about particular incidents? Thank you.
All right, Ms. Shanahan, it's your turn to ask Ms. Ravitch a question.
Ms. Ravitch, in 2010, you campaigned heavily on poor conviction rates of the previous administration. You said Sonoma County deserves better. Since taking office, you have failed to release statistics or trial conviction rates. The Press Democrat has requested these statistics, and you said, we don't track them, but they will be available soon. So why haven't you released internal statistics on how our office is doing?
It's a great question, and it's a question that I've been asking since I took office, because I did say Sonoma County deserves better, and as I indicated earlier, Sonoma County is doing better. Highest felony conviction rate in 10 years, which is something to crow about, even if it's not as high as it could be. With regard to trial conviction rates, apparently one of the staff members in my office has been tracking trial conviction rates. And I went in there and I got a hold of them, and I certainly will make them available on any Public Records Act requests since they are in existence. And what I'm really proud to see is that actually those rates are showing that we're having incredible success. Most recently in 2013, our felony jury trial conviction rate of cases that actually went to verdict was 90%. That said, that number's kind of empty if you don't know what the convictions were for. And so what I'm trying to do is not just throw numbers out there that sound good, because they're just like sound bites. They disappear after they're said. What I'm trying to do is get inside of those cases and see what those outcomes really mean. And to that extent, I've gone out, the Board of Supervisors who have supported me and continue to support me have given me $2 million. We have a case management system that we're in the process of unfolding, and it goes live in January 2015, so that we will be able to track that information. We will be able to better judge the performance of our attorneys so that we can help them be the best that they are when they go into the courtroom and assure accountability by all of us. Thank you.
And
do you have any rebuttal?
Yes. The Department of Justice that you keep talking about, your increase in conviction rates, was only 0.5%. They were only quantitative and not qualitative. In 2011, we actually produced statistics on domestic violence. And I have a copy of those particular statistics. So they can be tracked. We have tracked them. And it shows a low filing rate in domestic violence. And those were released in 2011. The only info that we're getting to the public is press releases. So we need to ask why. Why aren't we getting statistics?
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Ravitch, your second question.
Oh, okay. And I thought I was only asking one, but I will ask a second one. You earlier on talked about criminal grand juries in officer-involved shootings where it's a close call. I don't understand what a close call means to you. And you've been very vocal in your criticism of how officer-involved shootings are occurring in this county. You have gone on record to say that you think I should recuse myself because I have been endorsed by the sheriff, and then you go further and say you should recuse yourself because your husband is a deputy sheriff and you shouldn't hear any cases involving him or any close friends. And then later I think you said you should recuse yourself in all cases involving the sheriff's office. And then you fall back on a criminal grand jury that we open to the public when you can't figure out which way to go on an officer-involved shooting. So really my question to you is, what do you propose to do when difficult cases are presented to you, particularly in the context of something as serious as an officer-involved shooting? And why do you pin your remarks on a terrible tragedy that has embraced this community for political gain in this campaign?
Well, Ms. Ravitch campaigned in 2010 about reformation of the officer-involved shooting protocol. She herself talked about having the investigations conducted by DA investigators. So I'm just taking a page out of her playbook and holding her accountable, as she asked the community to do when she was running for office. In instances of officer-involved shootings where there's a close call, the Andy Lopez case would be one of those. In instances where we could go and present this evidence to the grand jury and they could make the ultimate decision, and the public can hear what type of evidence is presented, what type of law applies. And that decision would be made in any case where we feel it would be a close call. It would be a team effort, a group of individuals within the DA's office that are the most experienced in trial in dealing with officer-involved shootings and discussing it. What would be the best way to approach this particular case? That's how it would be done if I were elected. It would be through a transparent process, something that you yourself had campaigned on. And so I would recuse myself in the Andy Lopez case, as I think you should have recused yourself in the Andy Lopez case. You also could have implemented the external protocol in having the DA's office investigate that particular case. I'm not, saying anything that you didn't say in the last election, and it's important to hold our politicians accountable. This is a serious situation, and it deserves serious attention. And that's why I'm calling attention to the fact that it needs to be reformed, and we need to make positive change in the community. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, you don't know if it's a close call or not. You've been walled off from the investigation entirely, and it's really reckless to suggest that it's a close call in that investigation. It's reckless to talk about the nature of the investigation whatsoever. The mere fact that you brought that case into this campaign is shameful. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Officer-involved critical incidents are very difficult to investigate. You know that from your experience as a prosecutor. I have no reason to recuse myself. I've contacted the Attorney General's office. They have confirmed that I do not have a conflict. I can't walk away from my responsibility. That's what I was elected to do, make difficult choices, and that's what I'm going to do in this case. And I will be transparent, because when I do make a decision, it will be available to every member of this community, and the reason for that decision will be made available as well. That's transparency. That's not shifting the burden to others because you're unwilling to carry an awesome responsibility like that. Thank you.
All right. And your final question, Ms. Shanahan.
Goes back to the officer-involved shooting reformation. Ms. Ravitch, you campaigned on that, and many of us in the office thought that that was a good idea. Why haven't you even begun to look at that reformation in 3.5 years?
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. I have actually begun to look at it. The law enforcement leaders in Sonoma County meet on a monthly basis, and that has been a topic of conversation among us as a group and individually. I've also met with district attorneys throughout the state and have been surveying them to determine what is the best practice in each of the counties, to see what is the best way to go with this. But to suggest that, first of all, I campaigned on it. I did not campaign on it. I did talk about it during the campaign because the law enforcement community was very concerned at how long these investigations were taking. And I said, we need to make them a priority, and we have. And as a result, the investigations that have come into the office on my tenure have been a lot shorter in terms of turning out the results. It's funny that officer-involved shootings are taking up so much of this campaign. We were lucky enough to, I think, only have one in 2011, none in 2012, and then this year, unfortunately, or I should say 2013, we've had more than one is more than we should, but we've had more than that. With regard to reforming the way we do it, yeah, we should take a look at it, but I cannot say to the other law enforcement agencies, get out of the way, I'm taking over. It has to be by agreement, and that's one of the things I've learned by talking with the other DAs. They actually have agreement with the law enforcement agencies if indeed the district attorney does take the lead in these investigations. They're incredibly difficult investigations. In the Andy Lopez investigation, there were more detectives who were called out to do the investigation than we could ever come up with inside of our office. We don't have the resources to take on that type of responsibility. If it's decided that's the best practice, then I'm going to have to go and get some funding, and I'm going to have to go and get some staffing so that we can handle it appropriately. But first, I have to go and get the approval of the law enforcement community to allow me to do that job, if that's what I'm going to do, so that we can do the job right and get the answers that we all deserve. Thank you.
And do you have a rebuttal?
So you need the approval of law enforcement to make any decision on officer-involved shooting protocol. So you can't change the internal protocol, which allows law enforcement that's being investigated to review our report before it's finalized and make any edits or additions that they feel is appropriate. When is the time going to be that we need to take charge and reform this process? We need to be objective. It's important. Law enforcement requires it. The individual who is killed deserves it. The community deserves it.
All right, thank you. And that concludes our candidate questions to each other. And we'll go now to your questions in the audience. And if something strikes your fancy, please raise your hand, and I'm sure the card runners will hand you a 3x5 card, but we'll start with what we have here right now. And Ms. Ravitch, you would be first on this. How does the DA's office reconcile the decision to ask for state help in the Efren Carrillo case, but not in the Andy Lopez killing? Isn't there a potential for conflict in both cases?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I get asked it quite frequently. In the case involving Supervisor Carrillo, I reached out to the Attorney General's office because Supervisor Carrillo is one of 5 votes on the Board of Supervisors that approves my budget. It takes 4 out of 5 votes in order for my budget to be approved. I felt that there was a conflict there by virtue of that fiscal relationship that I had with Supervisor Carrillo. In the case of the Andy Lopez tragedy, I'm being called upon to investigate a police officer alleged, not alleged, but who shot a child. And I'm being called upon to investigate a member of a law enforcement agency. That's not something new here. That's something that we do all the time. I have brought charges against police officers in my tenure, both as a deputy district attorney, and I took that all the way through jury trial, and as district attorney, I've made decisions to file against members of law enforcement in a variety of different departments in this county. It's what we do. Now, there was a question about whether or not I had a conflict because the sheriff endorsed me long before this tragedy occurred, and the feeling was that he was too close to me so that I couldn't be fair. Well, I'm not investigating the sheriff. I'm investigating an employee in his agency, but nonetheless, I reached out to the Attorney General, both by phone and confirmed in writing, and said, I don't think there's a conflict. If you disagree, let me know. I'll turn the investigation over to you. They did not disagree. They agreed there is no conflict. Apparently, other groups have reached out to them since, saying, you need to take this investigation away from Ravitch because she has a conflict. Well, the Attorney General has not contacted me and asked me to turn over the investigation. If she does, I will do so. I will give her absolutely everything that we have, and I will stand by to provide whatever assistance is requested. But until and unless that happens, I have a job to do, and I can't just walk away from it because some people don't like what they see happening.
Thank you. Ms. Shanahan.
I think recusal on both matters would be appropriate. Efren Carrillo, he is in charge of the budget. I would find it hard to believe, though, that we would be held hostage by an individual on our budget if we chose to prosecute that particular individual, but I can see where that there could be a conflict. In the instance of the Andy Lopez case, sometimes the appearance of conflict is conflict, and that what's best for the community is that a recusal would be more appropriate, and requesting courtesy handling of that particular case by the Attorney General's office would be appropriate.
All right. Ms. Shanahan, should we have a community oversight committee in the event of an officer-related death? Why or why not?
I know there's been talk and a task force set up to deal with whether or not to implement a citizens review board, and I would be supportive of that if it is decided that that would be appropriate in this county. We could definitely work together in dealing with these issues. Again, the DA's office is here for the community. We prosecute cases, and we represent people of Sonoma County.
Ms. Ravitch?
I'm sorry, should there be a civilian review board? Was that what the question was?
Well, they say community oversight committee.
Community oversight. Yeah, there are community oversight commissions in some jurisdictions, and clearly that's where we're headed right now. The thing I like people to remember about the terrible thing that happened to Andy Lopez is it's not just terrible that he lost his life. It's terrible that our community was rocked the way it was, and that so many members of our community have now been expressing a loss of trust in the law enforcement community, as well as concern for other issues, such as the disenfranchisement of a variety of different members of our community, and a need for better public works in areas in our community. These are all different. There's so many layers that are coming out now as a result of this incident, and I think it's great that we're addressing them. If there is to be civilian oversight of police practices, my question always is, who's going to appoint the individuals that will do the oversight so that there can be independence, and what is their mission going to be? And then finally, you have to ask the question, if they're going to have oversight over a police agency, is the chief of that police agency willing to listen to what they have and consider implementing and actually implementing whatever changes they recommend? I think you have to answer those questions before you can determine that, in fact, that type of an organization or a body is a good fit for Sonoma County. So we're looking at it now. I'm part of the conversation. I want to continue to be part of the conversation, but I don't think we can just jump to, yeah, we need civilian oversight. It needs to be effective. And for it to be effective, I think that we need to answer the questions that I brought to the surface, as well as a lot of other questions going forward. And I hope this task force can find a little more direction. According to the paper today, they're a little bit sort of lost at sea, because I think they can be effective in representing our community. I have a member on the task force who reports back to me regularly, and I do think that they can be effective in helping us begin to move forward on this issue. Thank you.
All right, bear with me with this question, please. This is for Ms. Ravitch. Given a number of medical marijuana growing collectives, less than 15 patients, and legal, I think that's it, under the Sonoma County guidelines have been prosecuted in the last 4 years, and given that the DA's office has no written policies for such collectives, how can I, as a member of this small growing collective, feel safe from prosecution?
I think I understand the question. So I think it's somebody who is a 15-member collective.
Yes. Less than 15 patients, yes.
Less than 15 patients. We have, in Sonoma County, we do have an ordinance that applies at the county level that permits 30 plants, 3 pounds, 100 square feet. It was put into effect, I want to say, in 2006, but if I'm wrong, I know there's at least one person in the audience that will correct me. And it's an ordinance that the Board of Supervisors sought to repeal a couple of years ago, and I believe was supported by case law. The Board of Supervisors has retracted that effort, and as I've told advocates in the medical marijuana community, if the ordinance is on the books, I'm going to respect it, because I think it's improper for us to confuse legitimate medical marijuana patients by telling them that an ordinance on the books should not be recognized. So with regard to the concern that the individual in the audience has about how can they feel safe, I want to remind you that I cannot control the policies of whatever law enforcement agency you are concerned about coming and arresting you and taking your medical marijuana. But if you have concerns about our prosecution, you can come and talk to me. You can come and talk to somebody in my office. In my office, despite what's being said about low-level low-level marijuana cases, we are focusing on trafficking. We are focusing on money laundering. We are focusing on those who are committing violence behind the guise of being medical marijuana cultivators. Those are the people who we're focusing on, and that is the directive that I have given since I've taken office, that it will be a low-level priority. With regard to a written protocol, tough to do because case law keeps changing. We just had another new case come out about the ability of a collective to reimburse a grower for the costs. So as the legal landscape changes, we can try to have a written policy. It's something I am working with the medical marijuana community, and I have to stop, but I won't stop my efforts in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shanahan.
Well, I think it's important for the district attorney's office to set the stage for medical marijuana. For 3.5 years, we've been asking for a policy. We do not have a policy on it. We prosecute patients, trimmers, growers, and drug traffickers all the same. And as a result, we are backlogged in marijuana. It's not just me asking for a policy, it's the office. We need to implement a policy so that the community has some direction on what they can and cannot do in Sonoma County. Prohibition has not worked. We need to work towards decriminalization, regulation, and taxation. That's what has been my platform. And we need to strive and set the example as district attorney to do that. We can do that. And I think it's important for this community. Other agencies, other communities, other district attorney's office do just that. Butte County District Attorney's Office puts their policy on their website. So it's not something hard to do. And if elected, I would make sure that would be one of my first priorities, is implementing a medical marijuana policy so that patients aren't being dragged through the court system.
All right. Ms. Shanahan, if a law enforcement officer commits a domestic abuse against his own family, would you remove that officer's access to guns or have that officer removed from law enforcement?
I have no jurisdiction in removing an officer from his job. That's the purview of his chief or his sheriff. What we can do when there's an instance of domestic violence is get a criminal restraining order, which automatically removes firearms from that individual's possession. And there have been instances where officers have been prosecuted for domestic violence. And I will continue, if something like that comes up again, to follow the standard practice, as we do with all domestic violators, is getting criminal protective orders and having guns removed.
Ms. Ravitch?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I prosecuted members of law enforcement. I actually prosecuted a CHP officer on a domestic violence case, a felony domestic violence case, and he was convicted. And so needless to say, he was prohibited from possessing firearms as a condition of his conviction, and as a convicted felon, he is prohibited from possessing firearms. Domestic violence is so serious, it is so volatile. That's why I've made it one of the priorities in my office. And members of law enforcement are not above the law. They're treated just like everybody else, to the extent that we can deal with them within the confines of the law. But I have to agree with my opponent here. We can't tell the sheriff how to run his department. We can't tell a police chief how to run his or her department. We can only do what the law allows us to do, and do it as vigorously and as relentlessly as possible to ensure public safety. Because the lethality issues in domestic violence are frightening, which is why it's important that we target our energies towards not only prosecuting domestic violence cases, but preventing them through efforts such as the Family Justice Center. Thank you.
All right, and let's see, Ms. Ravitch on the next question. Ms. Shanahan is married to a deputy sheriff. Ms. Ravitch has been accused of being too close to the elected sheriff. Please address the relationship between the district attorney and law enforcement, and specifically what constitutes a conflict and how should they be handled?
Well, You know, conflict of interest is one where you can't be fair and impartial when you handle a case. And I've had conflicts since I've come into office where we have investigated individuals who I may have a personal relationship with, a friendship with, or even a financial relationship with. And so I've walled myself off so that I don't engage in the discussion of the charges or the disposition of the case. And we have that method set up for individual prosecutors who might have a conflict, whether or not they are related to a member of law enforcement who's involved in an investigation or related to an individual who might be charged with a crime or a victim of a crime. So we have all of that in place. With regard to this business about me being close to the sheriff, I got to tell you, I don't know him that well. It's a professional relationship. We don't go out to dinner. We don't even go out to coffee. But what we do is we work on issues to keep our community safe. And when something happens and I'm able to pick up the phone and I know that he will answer it and listen to what I have to say and perhaps disagree with me, we'll hang up the phone knowing we can pick it up again and have another conversation, because that's what we do as professional colleagues. And I think that if people took a minute and thought about that, they would want their sheriff and district attorney to be able to talk to each other on issues of importance to this community's safety. That's all it is. When the sheriff endorsed me, he spoke at my kickoff, and he hasn't been involved in my campaign whatsoever since. And the subject that he addressed, the reason he said that he endorsed me and supported me was because I am a fierce advocate for victims. And he respected that, and he believes that that is a very important trait in our district attorney. That's why he endorsed me. I'm proud to have that endorsement, but that in no way is impacting anything that I am doing with regard to his department. Thank you.
Ms. Shanahan.
I'm bound by the Business and Professions Code related to conflicts, and my being married to a deputy sheriff means I cannot handle any cases my husband investigates. And there are other individuals in our office who are married to law enforcement, and they too are walled off from their partners' cases. That's standard practice. I've been with my husband 10 years. It's never been an issue as a district attorney in keeping myself walled off from anything my husband's involved in. As far as people commenting on the fact that I can't be fair and impartial because I'm married to a sheriff's deputy and that therefore I have a conflict with the entire sheriff's office really begs the question that if I were a man married to a female deputy, would that be an issue? I don't think so. I can think for myself. Would I be sitting here asking for reformation of officer-involved shooting protocol and deregulation, or excuse me, decriminalization of marijuana if I let my husband, who's a sheriff, dictate what I do as a DA? I don't think so. I can make my own mind up. I can make my own decisions. And I think I can be very objective. And I have told the sheriff's office, no, I'm not filing that case because we don't have enough evidence. And I've gone round and round with them as they tried to tell me something different. And I stuck to my guns and said, no way. So I don't feel I have a conflict with the entire sheriff's department just because I'm married to one of them.
All right. And Ms. Shanahan, for the next question. When officer-involved shootings, and as you can tell, there are a lot of questions here regarding that particular situation. When officer-involved shootings take place, the community is polarized. What measures would you institute to immediately open a dialogue with all the parties involved to increase understanding and move towards healing?
I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, but I think what they're trying to say is we really need to educate the community on what the district attorney's office does. And part of that is community outreach, going out and educating the public on what we do. And I think with officer-involved shootings, there's a lot of mystery there because we have been so closed off as a district attorney's office here in Sonoma County regarding that. We only release a press release. We never release the reports. Ms. Ravitch states she will release the report in the Andy Lopez matter, and that'll be the first in my experience here in Sonoma County. And that's a good thing. The community needs to know what's involved in officer-involved shooting investigations as well as the law that applies. And it's really important that a district attorney's office educates the community and is completely transparent about the process so that they can trust the process and that we are being fair and objective in making our decisions on those cases.
Ms. Ravitch.
So I think Would you mind repeating it?
Yes, of course. When officer-involved shootings take place, the community is polarized. What measures would you, as a district attorney, institute to immediately open a dialogue with all the parties involved to increase understanding and move towards healing?
Yeah, and with all due respect to the questioner, I don't think that any time an officer-involved fatality occurs, the community is polarized. And point in fact that there was an incident that happened in 2011 in Sebastopol, and I don't think the community was polarized. There was an incident that happened shortly after Andy Lopez was killed, and I don't think the community was polarized. I don't even think anybody here remembers what the incident was that happened after Andy Lopez was killed. Okay. It was out in Guerneville. I think that, pardon me?
All right.
Oh.
Well, just,
But
maybe you can talk later with Ms. Ravitch.
I think that what concerns us is something that the Human Rights Commission addressed when they came here, which was the incidence of officer-involved fatalities. And I think it's something that the law enforcement community should always be looking at, the appropriate use of force in any situation. And I believe that is why we are going to be seeing a change in our community with regard to task forces that are being put together. With regard to the district attorney's role, we are charged with determining whether or not there is criminal responsibility involved, not with regard to whether or not the sheriff's policies are appropriate, not with regard to whether or not law enforcement's policies are appropriate, only with regard to whether or not a crime has occurred. And I'll just add to that that I was out early on after Andy Lopez was killed explaining our policy, putting our protocol out there for public, putting together information to inform the public, both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking, about the process that unfolds so that people could better understand what the process is. If you can understand the process, I think there's a lot less fear in what it is and hopefully perhaps a little more faith in the outcome. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Ravitch, why the concerns over California constitutional medical marijuana growers and firearms? Do not liquor store clerks and jewelers have access to firearms as a matter of course to protect their business assets?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I've been asked, what about the Second Amendment? If somebody happens to have a medical marijuana garden and happens to be a legitimate gun owner, why do you jump to conclusions that they're doing something illegally while they're armed? And I agree with that sort of question. I don't know. The initial decision is going to be made by the responding law enforcement officer with regard to whether or not there is arming involved in some illicit activity. But I will tell you that I will always err on the side of caution if I find somebody who is possessing marijuana that is not determined to be medical marijuana and is in the possession of a firearm. Unfortunately, more than most home invasion robberies occur when people are trying to steal marijuana. We've had a number of homicides in Sonoma County that have occurred in the pursuit of marijuana. There is a lot of violence around marijuana because it's a very valuable crop, and apparently they grow it very well here in Sonoma County because people travel great distances to come and get it and take it back where they can sell it for a whole lot of money. And we currently, as earlier talked about death penalty, we're looking at a case where there's an allegation that drug traffickers were executed by somebody over marijuana. So that's why I get nervous about it, and that's why I'm going to be vigilant about it, and that's why I'm going to address it as a violent crime. If somebody is armed and somebody is engaged in an illegal practice, then we're going to look at it, we're going to prosecute it, and we're going to hold the offender accountable. Thank you.
Ms. Shanahan.
That's why marijuana policy is so important that we need to implement here in Sonoma County so that we can leave the legitimate individuals who are using and growing marijuana because of medical needs and may or may not own a firearm and not doing anything else. Those people should be left alone. But we do need to focus on the serious and violent crime that is associated with the illicit drug activity involved around marijuana. And that's something where arming charges, enhancements, if you will, that we can charge as prosecutors on individuals who are drug traffickers and happen to have firearms are very important to know the distinction and looking at each case and making a decision on whether or not we should be filing against this individual because all the facts point to that they're a drug trafficker and they're armed, as opposed to a medical marijuana patient who is legitimately growing within the Sonoma County guidelines and not conducting drug trafficking and happens to own a firearm because they also like to hunt on the weekends. I think it's important that a marijuana policy be implemented so that we can address those concerns in the community.
Thank you. And Ms. Shanahan, in consideration of the oath of office that or you take in the district attorney's office, how do you interpret the Bill of Rights as it pertains to individual freedoms?
I'm not really sure I understand that question.
Well, I'm just reading it as it says here. In consideration of your oath of office, how do you interpret the Bill of Rights as it pertains to individual freedom?
Is there a way we can get further explanation of the question from the person who asked it?
Is that person here? Okay.
Maybe Ms.
All right.
Ravitch understands.
Can you tell
it.
me in 30 seconds what you meant?
Just our rights as the First Amendment say they are.
The rights as the,
Know how they feel about it,
how they interpret the Bill of Rights.
how they interpret it, and about freedom.
Okay. How do you interpret the Bill of Rights?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty really formulating an answer to that. Well, obviously, the Bill of Rights is extremely important, and individual freedoms are important. As a district attorney, we have to recognize certain rights individuals possess, such as the right to bear arms, and things like that. As far as our job as a district attorney, we have to prosecute crime. As we assess a case and decide whether or not a crime has occurred and whether there's sufficient evidence to charge that individual, and consider any rights that may have been violated while making that consideration in charging that individual, that's something that every prosecutor has to do in assessing a case. So I'm not sure that that answers your question, but that's the best I can do. Thank you.
Ms. Ravitch.
I'm a little bit hamstrung. I mean, I think you're asking about whether you can enjoy certain liberties and be assured of that by the district attorney's office to be free from illegal search and seizure and things of that nature. And we do have protections in place. I think that if somebody feels aggrieved that their constitutional rights are being violated in the context of a criminal case, their attorney or themselves, if they represent themselves, can bring the appropriate motions in front of a judge to protect those rights. We certainly don't look, and I think we can share this, we don't look to file cases where somebody's rights have been improperly violated. If we see that there has been a car stop or an arrest or some other detention has occurred or action has occurred that doesn't appear to be legally warranted, then we don't file the case. We don't file every case that comes into the DA's office. And to put it into context, we get about 20,000 cases into the DA's office every year. And we file probably about 76% of those cases every year. So we look at a number of different criminal cases every single year. And if there's a concern about certain liberties that are being infringed upon, we can look at that on the front end when we review the police reports or we receive information from the individual, and we certainly look at it as we review the case for filing and then ultimately for disposition, even dismissal if necessary due to illegal search and seizure. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch, going forward from here, what would you do about allocation of resources that have failed to deliver a report on the Andy Lopez shooting while prosecuting low-level drug crimes?
What is that?
Going forward from here, what would you do about allocation of resources? And we may be talking about two different, apples and oranges here. What would you do about allocation of resources that have failed to deliver a report on the Andy Lopez shooting while prosecuting low-level drug crimes? Apparently, they're prosecuting low-level drug crimes, but yet this report is waiting. So are there resources that
Yeah.
need to be addressed?
They're not the same.
Okay.
We have allocated resources to undertake the investigation and determination of whether or not criminal charges should be filed in the Lopez case.
Could you speak more into the microphone?
If you give me more water. We have allocated resources to look into and investigate the incident involving the Andy Lopez shooting. Bear in mind, we received the reports in late January after an exhaustive investigation was conducted by the Santa Rosa Police Department. After we reviewed their investigation, we decided further investigation was warranted, and we undertook that. We're still waiting for some of the results from the additional investigation that we undertook, including obtaining documents that were not part of the original investigative package. So I'm not concerned about the allocation of resources in terms of the speed with which the determination is being made. And certainly we're not allocating fewer resources because we're prosecuting marijuana cases. We have the Chief Deputy District Attorney who oversees the homicide team, which we do still have in Sonoma County, reviewing it. I think that this person has more homicide experience than anybody in the office and is assisted by a DA investigator who has over 30 years in law enforcement. So they, in addition, are overseen by myself as well as the chief investigator who himself has about 30 years, and I've said I've got about 27, and I've tried easily a dozen murder cases to jury verdict, if not more. So the resources are there. Sometimes things take time. If you go back and look at critical incidents in the past, they have taken 6, 9, 12 months. It takes time. You don't rush to judgment, ladies and gentlemen. You make sure the investigation is complete and that you have confidence in the decision that you make. And if it takes longer than you would like, it's unfortunate, but it's not because we're not giving it the full attention that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shanahan.
The external protocol allowed for the district attorney's office to take over the investigation of the particular case, and that would have helped resources. At the time that Andy Lopez case took place, Santa Rosa Police Department was subject to investigation by the Sheriff's Office for a shooting they had been involved in. During the time of their Santa Rosa Police Department's investigation of the Andy Lopez case, they had 2 murders that occurred over Christmas. So the investigators were taken away from the Andy Lopez investigative report writing and had to focus on 2 murders. So had we implemented the DA's office investigative team taking over the investigation, it really would have helped speed up and been more efficient, the process, as well as assigning a DA investigator to the case that isn't also involved in a triple murder homicide case that he's also working on. So it's really about allocating appropriate resources, and the DA could have done that from the get-go. The individual handling the particular investigative report writing in this matter also had to manage the misdemeanor teams and had other duties within the office. And again, focus our resources in relieving individuals of duties so that they could focus on these important cases, having the investigations done in-house so that we can allocate appropriate time and energy so that we make a thorough and thoughtful evaluation of the case, not rushing to judgment, but being efficient with taxpayer money and not wasting resources.
Thank you. A good deal of the job of district attorney is managing the prosecutor's office. What does that mean? What goes into managing a group of attorneys and keeping them content so that they want to remain? Ms. Shanahan.
Could you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
A good deal of the job of the district attorney is managing the prosecutor's office. What goes into managing a group of attorneys and keeping them content so they want to remain?
Well, the district attorney's office isn't just comprised of the attorneys in the office, and most of the attorneys managing them, we're like herding cats for the most part. It's a difficult job. But we have other employees in the office. We're actually a team of teams that all works together. And in order to manage the entire team of teams, you have to have approachability, you have to have accountability, you have to have transparency, and you have to work together. And sometimes that means having people around you who aren't just telling you yes, 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 but actually telling you no, 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 in order to do the best thing for the office. So it involves a team effort. The DA isn't the top dog and makes all the decisions. It's really a team effort. We have many people in the office that work hard, and we need to, as a DA, you need to inspire those individuals. You need to motivate those individuals, and you need to create an approachable and transparent and healthy work environment so that we can go to work and do the tough job and the people's work and prosecuting some very difficult subject matter cases, very dark side of society in many times, and it takes a toll on people in the office. And you need a leader who will inspire you to continue to do the good work, the hard work, and continue to inspire the team to be diligent in our efforts and doing a good job for the community. That's what it takes to run a DA's office, not someone who's at the top saying it's all me and not approachable and surrounding yourself with yes men.
Ms. Ravitch.
So inspiring lawyers is not easy. We're taught to be critical thinkers. We're taught to, as trial attorneys in particular, to look for weaknesses and to expose it and to use it for our own gain. Unfortunately, we have a lot of armchair quarterbacks in the district attorney's office. And I don't disagree with the expression, it's like herding cats. We have 48 lawyers in the DA's office, including me. And I don't manage my office by issuing edicts. I actually do lead by example, and I encourage teamwork. As an example, I brought our advocates from over by Cottingtown back to the main office so that they would be closer to the lawyers, closer to the courtrooms, and more available to the victims so that they could work as a team with the lawyers and the investigators and the victims to provide the best services possible. I've also tried to encourage the lawyers to work together so that when we do have homicide cases assigned to our most experienced attorneys, we'll assign a less experienced attorney to work with them. And as a result, we have more lawyers in our office now capable of taking these serious cases to trial, and they're getting great results. So when you think about a team, you have to think about a lot of different components, and I think that an important component of it is also respect. And I have tried to show respect to everybody in my office, and I've asked for it in return. Whether I have been always successful in making people know that they're valuable members of the office, well, you know, you can't make everybody happy because frankly, if anybody's been in an organization that's 100% happy, you have to really wonder about what kind of leadership that really is. Sometimes being a leader means telling people no. Sometimes being a leader means telling people, we're not going to do it the way you want to do it. We're not going to do it the way it was always done before I got here. We're going to do it the way that I think we should do it based upon my discussion with you, based upon my consideration of the options, and based upon my concern about what's in the best interest of public safety. Thank you.
Ms. Ravitch, when an underage teenager, under 18, is involved in a crime, what kind of circumstances need to exist to file charges in adult court as opposed to filing them in a juvenile court?
You know, that's a really good question because I have had to address that situation recently with a couple of situations. One involved a homicide, and it was one of the hardest decisions to make because when you take a juvenile out of the juvenile court system, which is geared toward rehabilitation, and you put them in the adult court system, which is less geared toward rehabilitation and more geared towards punitive measures, you're basically saying, you know, I don't think we can save him because if we make that effort, we're going to put our safety at risk. And it's really tough when you have to reach that place where you have to move into that different venue with a juvenile. During the brief period I did criminal defense, the juvenile component of it was the best part because it was an opportunity to help kids figure it out, move forward, and get back in the game. But when you take them out and you put them in the adult system, it's tough. So what we're looking at is violence. What we're looking at is a history of criminality and an inability to work within the confines of the juvenile justice system to be rehabilitated. We're also looking at the fact that the penal measures that are available for juveniles has changed drastically in terms of juveniles being released from a locked setting back into local supervision and the risk to the public increasing exponentially. So every case is looked at separately. It'll come out of the juvenile system where I have kept my prosecutors for extended periods of time so that they're better versed in what the juvenile system is all about. And it'll come over to the adult system where I'll look at it with the chief deputies, some senior prosecutors, depending upon whether it's a gang offense, and determine whether or not it should be a direct file. I don't want to go that way, but I will tell you that there have been a few incidents lately where we have had to go in that direction. Thank you.
Ms. Shanahan.
Welfare and Institutions Code 707B lays out when a district attorney can direct file a juvenile in adult court. It requires an individual to be over the age of 16, and the crime has to be very specific. It involves violence, some of the most serious crimes like murder and gang shootings. So it is used. I used it when I was a team lead for the gang unit. I prosecuted a few juveniles as adults under the Welfare and Institutions Code 707B direct file procedure. Again, we look at criminality of the individual, whether or not they've gone through the juvenile justice system and what sort of services they received, as well as the seriousness of the offense and their involvement in that particular offense before we made that decision. It's one of the tools we can use, and it's true, you know, some juveniles, perhaps this is the only way to get to them because they've been given every opportunity to get out of the cycle that they were in through the juvenile system, and it hasn't worked, and now we're talking about murder or something like that in facing an adult court. So it's really, you know, each case you have to review, determine if the person qualifies, and make a determination whether or not it's the best approach to handle this particular juvenile.
Thank you. And Ms. Shanahan and Ms. Ravitch, this will be the last question. Name 3 of your largest contributors during this election. And we'll start with you, Ms. Shanahan.
Well, I'm proud to say I have very little money. I don't have any large contributors. I've been doing a bubblegum and shoestring campaign. I have found that the campaign process, the fact that you need large amounts of money, keeps really good qualified candidates from running, and that's a sad state of affairs in America. It's been really disappointing. So I haven't had any really major contributors. I did receive today $2,500 from the Teamsters Union. It's the only organization that has endorsed me at this point. I have no other endorsements. I've gotten large donations from private individuals such as Chris Andrian of $1,000, and that's all in my campaign disclosure forms. But I'm proud to say I am conducting this campaign with very little money, and I think that that's the way we should be doing campaigns. We shouldn't be relying on big money expenditures because it's really quite gross in that process when you have to rely on that just to get the message out.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch?
Well, I honestly think that the largest contributors to my campaign so far have been my family members. They've supported me throughout my career. So I think they are the largest contributors. We do file 460s, they're called, and you can go online and take a look at them to see who our contributors are. The Teamsters endorsement is remarkable because they never talk to me. They never seem to be interested. They simply endorsed my opponent and apparently gave her quite a bit of money. The endorsements that I've gained have, for the most part, resulted after interviews with both of us. And the interviewing group, or perhaps individual, has decided to endorse me. And sometimes that has come with some financial support, but more often than not, it's simply an endorsement such as Crime Victims United of California, or some of the other groups that have supported me, Citizens for a Better Sonoma County, the Sonoma County Alliance. So with regard to specific numbers, I can't tell you, and I have to say I agree. I wish we didn't have to spend money. What I tell people when they do contribute to my campaign, I'm sorry that you're not contributing to the Family Justice Center or to another worthy charity. But I do believe that I'm doing the best job for Sonoma County. I do believe that I should be entitled to serve another term. I would be honored to have that opportunity. And unfortunately, it does require money to get the message out and to respond to some of the allegations that respectfully I have to disagree with because they're either unfounded or they're simply not accurate. Thank you.
All right. Now you can both take a deep breath. You're about to give your closing statements. And Ms. Shanahan, you go first. The campaign process has been a very interesting journey for me.
despite what Ms. Ravitch says, many of those organizations never met with me to endorse an individual because it's all about viability, and viability equates to money. So my job here is to put my message out. The office is in disarray. I chose to throw my name in the ring and risk my neck in running for this position because I felt it was the right thing for the right reasons. The community has a right to know what the district attorney's office, and we should hold our politicians accountable. We should not be lackadaisical about the truth. We should be transparent. Sometimes the truth doesn't look good. 112 jury trials last year. We can't calculate the conviction rate for our DA's office. I find that incredulous when our prior administration used to release statistics monthly. As DA, I will be transparent. I will provide information to the community to let them know I am doing the job for the people, and that sometimes we may not be doing the best job, but we will strive and continue to work hard with our team of teams to make the DA's office the best office possible. We need a leader who has vision, we need a leader who is transparent, and we need a leader who is approachable, and I'm that leader. Thank you.
Ms. Ravitch.
So again, I want to say thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to those of you who are here, those of you who might be watching, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. You know, I made one promise. If you go back, because somebody did video my swearing in, and I said, I promise I'll work hard every day for Sonoma County. And I don't think anybody can disagree with the notion that I've done just that, worked hard for Sonoma County. And contrary to what others would have you believe, we are having great success. I don't care if it's 0.5%, which is actually incorrect, increase in our felony conviction rate. Every single case that we are more effective at getting the right outcome for is success. And we're seeing success here in Sonoma County. We're seeing our resources devoted to things like an elder protection unit, which was not in existence before I came into office. There was an attorney assigned from time to time to do elder cases. We have a dedicated unit now, and it's making a difference. I think there was even admission that it is making a difference. We also are really tackling domestic violence, working in conjunction with the Family Justice Center, a wonderful model of serving victims of family violence, elder abuse, child abuse, and sexual assault. I came in a year where the budget was devastated. The year before me, we'd lost a lot of money. Money translates to salaries. The year I came in, they said, cut your budget further, Ravitch. I pushed back as hard as I could, but at the end of the day, we had a depletion of resources. So what did I have to do? I had to make smart choices. Were they the right choices for our community? Apparently so, because the conviction rates that are being reported by independent sources support that. And if you want to go on my website at www.joelravitch.com, I talk about a lot of other successes, like getting grants so that we can rebuild the staffing in our office with vertical prosecutors on DUIs, in violence against women, and in other areas. We're making a difference. We're setting the tone, and that's because I'm leading this office to where it needs to go to serve you, Sonoma County citizens, and keep this the safest community it can be. I would be honored to have your support, and I would be honored to serve a second term as your district attorney. Thank you very much, and thank you again, Ms. Richardson.
Thank you. Let's give both these candidates a round of applause. Good luck to both of you. Thanks to you, our audience, for coming out and supporting these candidates and hearing what they had to say. It's most appreciated by us, and I'm sure by them as well. Thank you to the City of Santa Rosa for allowing us to use the City Council chambers for this event. And last but not least, thank you for the League's Service Chair, Voter Service Chair, and their committee for their valuable assistance in putting this event together. As I mentioned earlier, to find out more about when this forum and other forums the League is conducting will be available, please go to our website, lwvsonoma.org, and click on Forums, and there you'll find a link that will give you the latest playback information. This same website will give information about becoming a League member that you may want to think about. And then we have another website, smartvoter.org. Just happen to have a few little bookmarkers like this. Here you can find information about local candidates and their views on various subjects. The last day to register is Monday, May 19th. Absentee ballots are coming out this week, the week of May 5th, so those of you who are that kind of a voter, please check your mailboxes. And Election Day is Tuesday, June 3rd. And finally, every election is important, whether it's a primary election or an election in November. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Vote. Encourage your friends, your relatives to vote. Don't complain, vote. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.